You're watching The Legal Breakdown. So, Glenn, this is the witness we've been waiting for, Michael Cohen, who testified today in Donald Trump's New York criminal trial, and he actually undermined the core tenet of Trump's defense. So we're going to talk about that. But first, just a reminder for those watching that Glenn and I will be doing comprehensive daily coverage of this Trump trial. So if you want to follow along with everything that happens, please make sure to subscribe. Okay, so Glenn, can you speak on how Michael Cohen undermined the core tenet of Trump's defense?
Yeah, Brian, Michael Cohen was actually pre-corroborated, kind of like being pre-approved for a loan. The prosecution team did a bang-up job sort of greasing the skids for the jury to believe Michael Cohen. How did they do that? Well, they put on witnesses who testified about what they knew, but also about their interactions with Michael Cohen. So witnesses like David Pecker and Stormy Daniels and Keith Davidson and even Hope Hicks had sort of signaled their interactions with Michael Cohen. So when Michael Cohen hit the stand and started to say the same things, that those witnesses had said, the jury was basically prepared to find him credible. But he wasn't only corroborated by witnesses. He was corroborated by emails and text messages and phone records and business ledgers, and perhaps most importantly, reimbursement checks for the $130,000 Michael Cohen laid out. He took a home equity line of credit. He paid out of his own pocket, his own funds, to make sure the Stormy Daniels story didn't get out so it wouldn't hurt Donald Trump's election prospects. And then Donald Trump is writing false checks out of his own personal checking account to reimburse Michael Cohen for the hush money payment. So now getting directly to your question, what was really the only lingering hope that Donald Trump and his lawyers had to maybe try to wiggle out from under criminal responsibility for this? Well, it was to try to convince the jury against all of the evidence that maybe Donald Trump wasn't doing this to gain advantage in an election. Maybe he wasn't really violating campaign finance laws. Maybe he was just trying to protect Melania's feelings. He didn't want this information to get out there and, hurt his marriage. Well, there were a number of choice quotes from Michael Cohen on the stand today that pretty much laid that to rest. It wasn't a strong argument going in to Michael Cohen's testimony, but...
Well, especially, by the way, sorry to interrupt, but especially as Stormy Daniels testified that Donald Trump himself said when they were having their affair that he didn't even sleep in the same bed as Melania.
Yeah, so there already were reasons for the jury to, discard this nonsense that this wasn't about winning an election. It was about protecting his relationship with Melania. But here are a couple of the things that Michael Cohen said today under oath, subject to the penalties of perjury. He said things like, I was following directions in delaying the Stormy Daniels payments, hopefully past the election, because Trump, quote, wasn't thinking about Melania. It was all about the campaign. Here's another quote from Michael Cohen. Cohen said he opened an account to transfer funds. He wanted no addresses on the checks, and he said he was delaying the payments until after the election because then it wouldn't matter. And, long ago, Brian, I think you and I discussed what some of the evidence was in this case that was disclosed at the time of the indictment in what's called a statement of facts. It's kind of like a speaking indictment. I still remember the number of the paragraph 19, because, Trump's loyalists and flunkies and lapdogs and mouthpieces kept saying this wasn't about the election. This was about wanting to protect Melania. Well, paragraph 19 in the statement of facts said Trump kept telling Michael Cohen, delay the payment to Stormy Daniels until after the election. Why? Because then it won't matter if it comes out. Because if I won, I won. And if I lost, I don't care that information will then come out. Where in the mix were Melania's feelings? So now there is, concrete testimony under oath from Michael Cohen, sort of confirming what we already knew. This had nothing to do with his relationship. It had everything to do with Donald Trump trying to illegally gain unfair advantage in a presidential election.
Now, Glenn, let's put ourselves in the shoes of the jury members. If the core tenet of Donald Trump's defense here is that this was all just to protect Melania, protect his family, and had nothing to do with the election whatsoever, didn't have anything to do with campaign finances, it was just solely about his family. Once that's undermined, how does that impact Trump's case moving forward? Like, once he's lost the confidence of the jury in this question, what does that mean? What are the implications here?
You know, it means there is no defense left for Donald Trump's lawyers to offer the jurors in closing argument. They will still come up with one, and I suspect it's going to be what we call a reasonable doubt defense. That is kind of the last refuge. It's an important principle of law that the prosecution must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But when you don't have a viable defense on the facts, what you argue to the jury, and I've had defense attorneys do this countless times, is, you should really disregard this piece of evidence and find an inconsistency over here, and you shouldn't really be confident in this particular document. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can't find guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It may look bad, it may look suspicious, may look highly damaging, but you can't find guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That is the last refuge, and I suspect this is going to be a reasonable doubt closing argument, because really the only remaining thing they could have argued, that this wasn't about gaining unfair advantage in the election, is pretty much all but dead at this point.
Glenn, there was one quote about emails that seemed to me to be especially damning on Trump's part. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, this was a great quote, and it's attributed to Donald Trump through the testimony of Michael Cohen, and it tells us precisely who Donald Trump is, who he has always been, and why he does what he does. Here's the quote from Michael Cohen. He says, Trump didn't use email because, quote, he knows too many people who have gone down using emails that prosecutors can use. I mean, just soak that up for a minute. Donald Trump said, I will not put in emails what I'm actually doing. Why? Because I know too many people who have put that kind of incriminating information into emails, and prosecutors use it to take them down. That is Donald Trump's thinking. That's his MO, his modus operandi, his method of operating. He knows that if he puts incriminating information in writing in emails, it could be used against him by prosecutors. This is who Donald Trump is. This is who Donald Trump has always been.
And to what degree can this kind of be used as consciousness of guilt on Trump's part, reading something like that?
It is, I think, atmospherically damning. It doesn't go directly to a charge of falsifying business records, but, the jurors will, I think, get a full appreciation of not only who Donald Trump is and how he does business, but I can just about guarantee that if they went back into the deliberation room and they had no email exchanges between Donald Trump and anybody else, because we've seen lots of email traffic and text message traffic, including between, for example, Melania and Michael Cohen, where Melania is saying, Michael, please call DT immediately, right? But the jurors would say to themselves, well, why are there no emails from Donald Trump? Well, guess what? That is a mystery that they don't have to take back to the jury deliberation room with them, because Donald Trump, through the testimony of Michael Cohen, announced why there is no email traffic in evidence. And the one thing I can tell you, Brian, is I never wanted to give my jurors mystery. I didn't want to give them something that they could dwell on and maybe use, whether legitimately or not, to try to convince other jurors that, there really may not be enough evidence to convict. Because look, there are no emails from Donald Trump admitting to anything. Never, never give your jurors mystery.
Glenn, I do want to ask overall how damning you think Michael Cohen's testimony was to Donald Trump. But first, just a quick announcement for Legal Breakdown viewers, and that is that I've just written a book. It's called Shameless. It's available now for pre-order. So if you want to support the work that I do, not just in the Legal Breakdown series, but on YouTube more broadly, please consider ordering. I'll put the link on this screen and also in the post description of this video. You can also check out briantylercohen.com/book. So just a quick aside there. Appreciate anybody who can make those pre-orders. Okay, so Glenn, back to the question. Scale of 1 to 10, how damning do you think Michael Cohen's testimony was to Donald Trump today?
So today I would say it's about a 9. However, he has not yet begun cross-examination. Now, what I will say is what I've seen based on the reporting coming out of the courtroom during the trial, the defense has not really done a bang-up job cross-examining witnesses. I'm not quite sure why that is. But, the question will become, how does Michael Cohen perform during cross-examination? Brian, what I always told my witnesses about what to expect on cross-examination is, however you refer to me, if you call me, sir, you don't call me sir, whatever your demeanor is, please make sure to use the same demeanor, be just as polite, be just as calm and respectful and level-headed, answering the defense questions on cross-examination as you are when you answer my questions on direct examination. Some witnesses get that, some don't. Some have a hard time controlling themselves. And there are defense attorneys who are very good at their craft, and they will intentionally bait witnesses, trying to get them, upset, confused, trying to get them to, take the bait, to show their anger, because then the defense attorneys will argue to the jurors in closing argument, you saw what a hothead he was. You can't credit what he told you. So, I think Michael Cohen has probably been well prepared by the prosecution. We always do a mock cross-examination of our witnesses to make sure we fully prepare them so they know what might be coming. I have a feeling Michael Cohen will perform fairly well. He is a lawyer after all, but it's really hard to gauge the effectiveness of the evidence he just provided because he hasn't yet been cross-examined. In isolation, I would put it at about a 9, but you and I, I'm sure, will revisit that after Michael Cohen has been cross-examined and we have a full assessment of how he performed.
So basically, when he's giving his initial testimony, that's basically him putting his best foot forward, and so he's hit his high watermark, and now it's just a matter of whether he can stay there or whether the defense, Donald Trump's team, can chip away at that with their cross-examination. Is that right?
Exactly. And, it's funny because sometimes witnesses feel constrained on direct examination. It is rehearsed. We do go through a mock Q&A because it's only fair to the witness that he or she knows all of the questions the prosecutors are going to ask. Every exhibit the prosecutor is going to show to the witness and have the witness authenticate. That's the legal term that allows us to move it into evidence. And then what I have seen is once they're on cross-examination, often witnesses feel far less constrained because that really hasn't been practiced. Even we do a mock cross with them, but we don't know precisely what the defense attorneys will ask them. And then sometimes you see a witness, like this was the case with Stormy Daniels, kind of settle in and get very comfortable just sort of spontaneously answering questions truthfully. And it was really interesting to see how Stormy Daniels was really getting the better of the defense attorney on cross-examination once she loosened up a little bit. And then I have seen it go the other way, where all of a sudden, even if the witness has been somewhat controlled and they have not sort of risen to anger during the direct examination, they knew all the questions. Once a defense attorney starts pushing them and sort of questioning their truthfulness, their accuracy, their memory, sometimes you will see the witness lash out on cross-examination. We'll have to wait and see what kind of a witness Michael Cohen will make on cross.
Well, I think it's important to note in all of this that Michael Cohen's in the right here. I mean, he's already gone to prison for the crimes that he's committed. So at this point, all he's doing is telling the truth about a criminal activity that was so egregious that he himself was punished for it. And so now it's just a matter of holding accountable the person who was facilitating those exact crimes. So, the illegality is perfectly evident here. It was so evident that, again, Michael Cohen himself was held to account for it. So really, I mean, him just sitting on the stand and telling the truth is all he needs to do. With that said, we will continue to follow along with all of Michael Cohen's testimony, including the cross-examination at the hands of the defense. So again, for those watching right now, if you want to follow along when we do get to that video, which will be forthcoming, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on this screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.